Hello, and welcome to Glory Be, interesting people and how they pray.
Each week, we chat with interesting people about their lives, their work, and how they pray. I'm Sharon Hanish.
And I'm Mike Malcolm.
Our guest this week is Ellie Rocco. Ellie grew up attending the School of St. Mary and is currently a senior at Bishop Kelley High School here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. In 2017, Ellie was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia and moved to St. Jude for treatment. She continued chemotherapy until the end of her freshman year at Bishop Kelley. After graduation, Ellie plans to attend Missouri State University and major in child life studies. Currently, Ellie is involved in the Bishop Kelley Fine Arts program. She is the Publicity Officer for Student Council and is on the Make-A-Wish Youth Leadership Board. She is also a Brother Bernadine Scholar and created a diagnosis bundle for patients and families diagnosed with cancer that are moving to St. Jude. Welcome, Ellie. We're so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. What is Child Life Studies? That's what you'll be pursuing at Missouri State?
Yeah, so Child Life Studies is the major that gets you to be a child life specialist.
Okay.
Where I'll work in hospitals, preferably St. Jude, but we'll see, helping kids understand their diagnosis and learning how to cope with it.
Wow.
So the doctor comes in, delivers the news, and then did you have somebody like that who helped you? Yeah.
I've had lots of child life specialists, my favorite being here at St. Francis, but child life basically is when the doctor talks to the adults and uses language a kid could never understand. The child life specialist comes in and explains to the 3-year-old what the genius doctor is saying.
Right. Oh, wow. So how much do you have to sit in on, do you pre-game with the doctor before you go into the family?
I'm sure you do. I'm sure it's also reading charts and things. But, I mean, I know it used to be, I was actually talking to a woman the other day who was one of the first child life specialists, and she was saying they used to just play with kids. They used to be like the play lady. Yeah. And so it's a lot of that, a lot of just like bringing up morale with kids, but it is understanding like what their diagnosis is and how to like convey it to their age group.
St. Francis Hospital has a great children's hospital, that whole wing. Everything looks, it's all bright colors like this big blue wall and things like that. It seems like a happy destination, even though it can be a scary place for the parents. So were you inspired by that at all? Yeah.
So child life, I didn't always like it. When I was going through cancer treatment, I did not like child life specialists at all. They all wanted me to go hang out with other people my age, which I did not want to do. And when I got to St. Francis, I developed a very unhealthy fear of child life specialists. And when my child life specialist at St. Francis, Elizabeth, walked in when I was receiving treatment and was trying to get me to walk around, do something good for me, I was not having it. And eventually she told me that St. Francis has this really cool, like, stained, blown glass in a lobby there. And every day would just come in my room and, like, beg me to go see it. And eventually I took her up on it, probably because I was kind of annoyed and I just wanted to get it done with. But after that walk, I like really loved her and I learned a lot about her life and I just thought she was so cool. And she got me to do something that nurses couldn't. And it was in a very unique way. And it kind of intrigued my interest.
Yeah, that's like an inspiring vocation almost. So take us back. As you're describing, you were here at the School of St. Mary. You're just a regular middle school kid. You play volleyball, I don't know what else you were doing, and summer hits, right, after the 6th grade.
Yeah.
And what happens?
Well, looking back on it, kind of towards the end of 6th grade, I was getting really tired. I was taking naps after school, which wasn't really like me, but that didn't seem weird at the time. It just seemed like, oh, she's playing volleyball and working out more, so she's just tired. But looking back, it was definitely a symptom. But around my 13th birthday, my friend and I were swimming, and she kicked me in the wrist, and it was just, like, horrible pain. I couldn't move my wrist, and we thought maybe I'd jammed my wrist because we got an x-ray, and there was nothing wrong with it. And so we thought maybe she just jammed it, but she actually triggered my symptoms. So, in a way, she kind of saved my life. But I went to the lake with my family, and I remember specifically sitting at the kitchen table, and I was drinking from like a red Solo cup some water, and I picked up my cup, and my wrist just started shaking uncontrollably, and I was so afraid. At that moment, I knew something was seriously wrong with me. And then I heard my cousin start to come upstairs, and I panicked, and I slammed my hand down on the table, and I forgot all about it. And I didn't remember that incident for 3 more months. But it did make me know something was wrong with me, and I just kind of played it off, and then eventually it got worse. Both my wrists were hurting. I couldn't move my arms. One day, for some reason, my ankle hurt. That was just one day thing. But it got to the point where I was completely immobile in my arms. And so we're going to my pediatrician, and no one was figuring out what was wrong with me. My blood tests looked normal, which is why they think they caught my leukemia pretty early. But eventually my pediatrician was just like, we're going to admit you. Things are going to happen faster if we get you in the hospital. They'll want to get the lab results faster.
That was here at St. Francis.
Yeah, it was at St. Francis. And so I was in the hospital, and they couldn't really figure out what was wrong with me. They thought I had juvenile arthritis, and they were ready to diagnose me, ready to send me to Oklahoma City to get some treatment for it. And then some guy in the lab wrote, possibly leukemia, on my labs. And they were all very upset because they wanted to get steroids in me to get the pain away. And you can't do that if there's a possibility of leukemia. And so we had to run a whole bunch more tests, and it did come up positive. So I was sent off to St. Jude, and I spent some time living in Memphis and receiving treatment there, and then moving back to St. Francis at our affiliate clinic and receiving treatment and going back and forth. And the next almost 3 years of my life were about cancer treatment.
Were you afraid?
I'm gonna be honest, I was pretty drugged up. I did not realize that I had cancer until 3 days in. It did not hit me.
And when you're that age, I'm not sure if you've ever known somebody with cancer, if you know the severity of it. Did your parents explain things, or was the child life specialist kind of, how did you tell us about what you were thinking at the time?
I'm sure somebody explained it to me. I just was not understanding anything. I know a child life specialist came in and did a demonstration about what leukemia was. It was not hitting me at all until one night I was laying in my hospital bed, and there's this digital chart, the chart that would typically hang at the end of the bed. It was digital. It was on a TV screen, and I was reading it, and I saw my name, my medical record number, and leukemia. And I guess I had never seen the word leukemia in my life. You really just hear cancer, and bald child.
Right.
That was the image I had. And so I was reading leukemia, and I was like, okay, this is what I have. This is a weird word, weird to spell. Where does the U and the E go? That was kind of when I started processing it. I was like, okay, this is what I have. I have this thing called leukemia, and this is apparently going to be 2.5 years of my life. And I started processing it all that night.
Okay. And then, so you continue through these treatment. These treatments can be brutal.
Yeah. I was very lucky that I had leukemia because it's the most curable for children, but it's also the longest treatment. So I had a lot of different types of chemo. The hardest one for me was probably this thing called high-dose methotrexate, and you stay in the hospital for 2 weeks, receiving this constant flow of it. And it really depends on you and how fast you get it out of your system when you get home. And that was when I met the child life specialist at St. Francis, was during that treatment, and I was in the hospital for a ridiculous amount of time because I just couldn't get it out of my system. And so that was probably one of the hardest treatments for me just because of how long it took. But, there's also arguable ones pegosparaginase I had an anaphylactic reaction to and almost died.
That,
yeah. So that's also pretty bad, but...
Did you meet other kids going through this, or you sounded like you didn't want to really talk about it?
I was pretty a lot of teenagers do it where they just shut down. I knew one kid, I don't think I ever heard him say one word. He was even more extreme than me with the not talking to people. But I met a few kids through different events that I went to. I met a girl through our music therapy because we had our therapy sessions one after another. And so I knew what instrument she was playing, and I knew her name and stuff. But I did become friends with this one boy because he was diagnosed after me from Tulsa, and we kind of became friends to the degree that your friends. We didn't really talk about things outside of cancer other than, like, because we wanted to talk to somebody with a shared experience. Because with my friends, it was like, oh, can we talk about this? Can we not? Like, people don't really know how to handle it, especially, like, 7th graders don't know what to talk about. And so it was nice to have, like, a friend who I could also give advice to. Like, he was having the same struggles that I had, like, a year prior. So I would give him advice and be like, oh, yeah, this is what you can do with your friends to where they don't feel awkward and you can actually do it. Because my friends would be like, oh, do you want to, like, because we used to, like, play sports together. And, like, do you want to play a sport? And I was like, I can't. And then they'd be like, oh, do we want to go somewhere to eat? And I was like, well, I can't eat everywhere. So,
oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I had so many dietary restrictions. I'd be like, well, where are we going to eat? Because that has to be thought out. And it just became, like, a weird thing.
Yeah, well, so you are now on the board for Make-A-Wish. Do those people on that youth board, are they shared experience? Like, are they all cancer survivors or?
They aren't. Most of them are just kids who just, like, really want to make a difference. And it's incredible to see. I love all of the people on that committee. They're so wonderful. My co-chair is the, like, sweetest girl ever. She's from McGinnis.
But no experience.
No experience. Most of them just know Make-A-Wish. Some of them have friends who have gone through treatment. There's a lot of Bixby kids because Bixby has just always fundraised for Make-A-Wish. They're great at that. And so a lot of Bixby kids are on that council.
What does the council do? Like, do you I know you work, I mean, it says the leadership board. So do you advise or are you actively helping raise money or?
Yeah, most of us go into our own high schools. I have 2 other girls from Bishop Kelley on the council. And there is one kid who was a Wish kid, and I think there was one last year as well. But we go in to our schools, and we set up fundraisers for Make-A-Wish. I work with our student council mostly, setting up fundraisers. We've done profit shares at Bishop Kelley, and we're working on some more stuff. But it's basically just getting kids to know how to do all these volunteer things because we're just not super exposed to that because unless we're required to for, like, service hours, we don't really do those extra things. And so the point of the leadership committee is kind of just trying to get Make-A-Wish into high schools because I was having a conversation with somebody in Make-A-Wish, and they were saying they read this research study where if you don't, like, donate and do things for charities by the time you're in your 20s, you never will. People know how they feel about charity before then. So the point of this committee is to get those kids to love Make-A-Wish and love giving back to their communities before they've reached that point.
That is super cool.
Do you see your? Oh, go ahead.
Did you get a wish?
I did get a wish. My wish was a little complicated because my wish was to go to Europe, and then COVID hit.
Oh, gosh.
I was supposed to go June of 2020, so I did not go to Europe. But Make-A-Wish is amazing, and they were doing this thing called reimagining, and so I reimagined my wish, and I was a little tricky with it, and they paid for a little bit of my Kelley tuition, and my dad put what he would have spent into a travel fund, nice. And then when Bishop Kelley did their trip to go to Rome, we used that money to send me.
Perfect.
What was the highlight of Rome? If you picked one thing that you loved.
It was amazing. I'd have to say Assisi. If I could live anywhere in the world, it'd be Assisi because it was just such a beautiful city. Like, anywhere you looked, it was gorgeous. Whether it was a building or, like, the mountains inside, it was just out of a movie. It was gorgeous.
Awesome.
I would agree with that.
Yep.
We just got back. I mean, we just went to Europe. Yeah, I'd love to see.
Hard to argue.
Hard to argue.
That's great. Well, you've got some experience with leadership and fundraising. Do you see you in the future? I know child life will be a huge thing, but could you see yourself staying on Make-A-Wish boards?
Yeah, I'm this summer working on maybe doing an internship with Make-A-Wish just because I love those people and I love that community and I love, like, working there and working with those people for that mission because I think Make-A-Wish is just such an amazing organization. But yeah, I mean, as there's a branch in every state, so wherever I am, if I'm close to a headquarters, I'd love to, like, to work with them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, before we transition to our How You Pray, I wanted to ask one other thing I think is cool. We were talking about it before we started recording, but that your job, your kind of like part-time job as you're working during high school, is to be a princess. Like, because you said right after you finish this podcast, you're headed over to Harweldon.
Yeah, the Harweldon Mansion. I'm doing an event there as Anna. But yeah, I work at My Little Dollhouse, and I get to make magic for kids. It's so special. I get to play princesses and work with them at their kids' birthday parties and just have the best time. Like, I love getting to read to them, to sing to them as the princess, and they think you're just like the best person in the entire world. So it's so much fun.
Do you have to buy the outfits for it?
No, they provide them, and they're gorgeous. They're like all park accurate.
Right.
So they're like beautiful, beautiful costumes.
Yeah. I mean, it's stuff that you wouldn't normally wear.
Yeah, no.
Just walking down the street.
I'm not normally walking down the street in a huge ball gown or like a Rapunzel braid.
Right.
So are you always the same princess, or they tell you and you put on whatever?
Yeah, you do whatever they need. Most of the time, I'm Anna or Rapunzel or Ariel. Those are kind of my main ones. But I've been Snow White, I've been Cinderella, I've been all sorts of princesses.
That's cool.
That is cool.
Well, and you said one question before we switched to prayer, but I'm jumping in. I want one more question. You've got a great vocal talent, and you have kind of a passion is being on stage. And I remember recording. I was new at the Church of St. Mary. I think you were in 5th or 6th grade, barely. And I remember I shot video, and I may even have it. We might link it in the show notes of you, maybe Ava, doing Annie. So over at the, remember that?
Yes, we were talking about this the other day because our senior show, like the last musical we'll do together, is Annie.
I know, it's kind of
and
ironic.
We're like, isn't that so weird? It's the bookends.
Right.
But yeah, I've done theater for a long time.
Yeah.
I love it. It's so much fun. It's where I've met all of my friends.
Yeah.
We're through Bishop Kelley Theater. But yeah, I won't do theater in the future just because I won't have time for it.
Yeah. Would you sing in a choir? Because you're also in the jazz choir.
Yeah, I love singing, and I'll always find a way to sing. I'll sing in church choirs and things, but we'll see.
Okay.
Well, and as we transition, because now we're going to talk to you about how you pray, I think of you, I know you help lead music at Quest, which is, for people who don't know, it's the Christ the King here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, calls their youth group Quest. And so one of the big parts of that is praise and worship music. And you help lead that. Like, is that a part of how you pray? I mean, do you like that music?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest way I pray is through praise and worship. I found Quest my freshman year, probably the same time that Noah did. But it's just such a special place, and I wish it was just as big as it used to be, but because of COVID, it's just kind of died a little. But there's still some kids who go, and it's so special. You just get to, like, sit in front of them and just, like, sing these like beautiful songs with like wonderful lyrics, and we have so much fun doing it. Like, we have some songs that are like super upbeat, and like we have like hand motions for it, and it's so fun and like so cheesy. And like this year we ended up making hand motions to a song about Mary, and it was so funny. But like we have fun with it, but then we also sing like really deep songs that like we all like really feel, and it's like it's just such the most beautiful space. Like all the lights are off, it's just the screen with like words, and then our little like reading lamps for the sheet music, and it's my favorite. I love it.
Yeah, it's just it can be just a really powerful experience to enter into a relationship with God in that way. You know, I've had that same experience as well. So you're also very involved in retreats, like you've helped lead Kairos, and why has that been important?
Retreats at Bishop Kelley are just such a wonderful thing. Like, everybody kind of just goes on them, whether they're Catholic or not, whether they believe in God or not. And it's just like, some people just go for fun, but I've always gone because I like genuinely want to go on a retreat. But my grade has been so great about it. We're all like really into the retreat experience. And so I've gone to every retreat at Bishop Kelley. But Kairos, there was something different about it. I loved it. And I went as a junior to the senior retreat, knowing that I would work it for the first time senior year. And so that was also a weird experience because I was like listening to the talks and knowing I'm going to give one of these. But it really taught me how to pray, because I'd always prayed, but it wasn't
you grow
really
up, like praying with your family, or
yeah. I grew up praying with my family, and praying and doing all the like memorized Catholic prayers. And then when I went with my grandparents, the like more just like talking prayers. But I never really like understood how to pray with my own relationship because I thought I did. I thought I was great at praying and I thought I was super religious. And then after my cancer treatment ended, I just kind of like, my relationship with God just kind of like halted because before that, like as a little kid, God was kind of like out of reach and it was like something at Kairos we call like the mountaintop God, like super far away. You don't feel like you can get to him. And then as I went through cancer treatment, it was like I needed God every second of my life. He was what was keeping me alive and I was praying all the time. But once I like finished treatment, it was like, God can't be this like God that I'm praying to like save my life all the time. And then I don't want to go back to like what he was. And so it was just like this weird awkward phase where I like didn't know what to do. And it was just like that for like high school. And then I went on Kairos and they're like, hey, God's your friend. You can just talk to him. And I was like, why did no one tell me this? You can just talk to him? And so God kind of just became my friend and I like just talked to him. I'll be a crazy woman in my car talking to the air. But like it has kind of just changed my perspective and it's been such a great experience.
Well, Missouri State has a great Newman Center there, I guess. So you have to experience it. So what's your hope for college? You know, your spiritual life in college, because I know that Quest has been such a huge part of high school. What does college hold for you spiritually?
We'll have to see. I mean, I certainly plan on like keeping my relationship with God and like making it stronger, but I'll have to find some friends that know something in Springfield. But
Catholic student centers or Newman centers are often really good. That they offer retreats and free. My kids always go over for the free dinner and the free breakfast, and they draw people in. It can be a great community and offer a lot of opportunities for service too. So, which has been the great thing about Quest. Have you been on their mission trip?
I did go on a mission trip. I went to the one that was in Tulsa, for the gardens, Global Gardens, I think is what it's called. But yeah, that was such a wonderful experience, and it was so fun. And it was also really funny because we were like sleeping in the Marquette gym, which was just such the weirdest experience ever because I was like next to a girl who like went to Marquette and she's like, I'm sleeping in my middle school gym. This is so weird. But it was so fun.
That's kind of a cool COVID way to keep people together, and to give you that experience. Because there is something about everybody working together around the clock to serve the poor or needy. I don't know. That's impressive that you did that.
Well, that's great. Well, back to Kairos. If you were talking to a sophomore who's thinking, oh, should I go, should I not go? What would you tell that person to expect?
So Kairos we can't really say a lot about.
Yeah, there's some secrets.
But we have junior year you go on a retreat called Search. And a lot of people love Search and they hear that Kairos, like you either like Kairos or Search. And I just kind of say like Search is about your relationship with others and like finding God in that. And I was like, but Kairos is about like you and God and nobody else. And if you want like that personal relationship with God, Kairos is like where you should be. And most people at Kelley would agree with that statement. But I tell people like Kairos changed my life and I love it so much. And people go, like we've had a lot of people at the retreats this year and all the boys just went and it was super successful. So a lot of people at Kelley go. You don't need much talking into to go to it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of positive pressure. Everybody should go. That's great. Well, one of the questions that we ask everybody on this podcast, or we try to, is, was there a time in your life when it was difficult to pray? Was there a time in your life?
Yeah, there was. Most people assume that like when you're diagnosed with cancer, that's the hardest time to pray, but it wasn't for me. I was like really faithful during that time. I had a friend that was just like, hey, God's got this. He's going to make this beautiful. And I just kind of took that. But once I finished treatment, it was probably the hardest point for me to pray because I just didn't know what to pray about or how to pray, or I was just like a little lost. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, that That is a common experience. When there's a tragic crisis, it's easy to turn to God. But once you get through that, sometimes, yeah, just kind of like you described, well, I didn't have anything really to ask God for. And then you had that experience of going to Kairos and reigniting that. I would encourage, people to go on retreats. We have an ACTS retreat here that's similar for adults, similar to, I think, Search and Kairos.
Yeah.
And we might put a link because I think we have some. We'll be having some coming up. And so we're going to link to the video.
Yeah, if I can find that video.
The Annie video.
So, yeah.
And we could link to if anybody wants to go see Annie at Bishop Kelley. That's going to be,
Absolutely.
2 weeks or a week and a half, really?
Yeah, it's really soon. It's President's Day weekend.
Okay.
So it's coming up.
So it's coming up. Those productions at Bishop Kelley are always so good. And I know it's been a gift to you and your family. Your sister was involved, and certainly to our family as well. So anyway, so the second question that we always ask all of our guests as we're closing out is if you could ask everybody to join you in one prayer intention, what would that be?
Probably for cancer patients, because you go through a lot, it's a long time, and it's always hard.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, we'll join you in that prayer. Would you lead us in a glory be?
Of course. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie.
Glory Be is a production of the Office of Communications at the Church of St. Mary in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm your producer, Mike Malcolm. See you next time.